So last time we found a bunch of augments, former embryos that had been created during the build-up to the eugenics war. They're all grown up and had taken over a Klingon ship. And when Archer shows up to deal with them, they take their surrogate father, Dr. Sung, too, to show how easily they can take our stuff. We kick off the episode with a flashback where Sung is educating the augments in the history of the eugenics war, which is good, to warn them about where things went wrong. Like I said, I think nurture played a big part in that. Convincing them they're better than everybody else from birth is only going to lead to disaster.
Humans will always fear you. They fear your power, your intellect. They fear you because you're everything they want to be, but can't be.
Case in point. But the goal is actually not to take over the world, or the galaxy for that matter, is to make a place where augments can come into their own and become the future of mankind. Sung took some of the embryos from Cold Station 12 and raised them to serve as the beginning, with the intent of his children going back to retrieve and raise up the rest on a world of their own. Now that they're adults and he's freed, they can start in on that plan. So he shows them Cold Station 12, and quickly Malik concludes that a shot to life support would kill everyone within hours and let them go in unopposed. Sung has to put the kibosh on that, but it's the first mistake on his part. Not in stopping the mass murder. I think we can all get behind that part of the plan. No, I mean, he hasn't seen them since they were children. He's having trouble not still thinking of them in those terms, that he says something and they will obey. But they've had to spend the last decade making their own decisions. Failing to recognize that because he's so focused on the mission is a mistake. He can make all manner of reasonable arguments as well as appeals to Malik's ego. A human would brute force their way in and get everybody killed. A genius would find a way to do the same thing and not spill a drop of blood. Prove you're better than them by acting better than them. After the titles, Enterprise, with no other leads, has headed to the world where Sung has said the augments could be found. Obviously, it's abandoned since everyone's joyriding in a Klingon ship, but there might be some clues. But while they're looking into it, they find the lone occupant, although not for lack of trying on his part. To be fair, they've come into his home and are pointing guns at him. It's all reasonable for them, but it doesn't look good to the kid, after all. And after the stories that Sung said, the moment that Archer says they're from Earth, the kid thinks that they're here to murder him, so he lunges at Archer with a knife. Luckily for him, the kid doesn't have the 5 times his strength that an augment would typically have, or else he'd look rather foolish trying to wear his ball cap with a knife sticking out of his skull. Back on the Klingon ship, Sung is coming to terms with Rakim's death. Oh, you remember Rakim's death? The one where Malik was forced by Rakim's abandonment of Sung's teachings and insistence on trying to stab Malik, that tragically forced Malik against his will to take his brother's life, and even that, it was totally an accident. Sung can no doubt smell the bullshit on that story like it's a hot July day on a dairy farm, but Sung harbors great guilt over the augments having to raise themselves without him. So in the end, he puts this on his absence. I leave you alone for a little while, and you murder your brother. I suppose I've only myself to blame. Back on Enterprise, Phlox reveals that despite similarities to the others, this kid somehow lacks their enhancements, hence the reason that they nickname him Smike. And it's also the reason why they left him behind. But he's not going to tell Archer where they are anyway.
Your brothers and sisters are in danger. They attacked a Klingon ship. If the Klingons find them before we do,
then more Klingons will die.
That's not a bad point, actually. You've got to help me, Lois Lane. If you don't, then that man with the crowbar is going to attack Superman. They deduce that Sung is heading to Cold Station 12 to collect the 1,800 embryos that are stored there. Also stored there are virulent diseases that are used for study. The embryos were kept in storage because when the war was over, there was no agreement over what should be done with them. Do we keep them? Do we destroy them? It was 1996. You can't just destroy a bunch of embryos in an election year. Malik is already thinking that Sung is showing unfitness as their leader, but Persis is offended at the idea of pushing their father away, just hours after being reunited. How long has it been since they've all been together as a family? It so offends me as your sister that I can hardly have sex with you. So Malik acquiesces because he really wants to get laid, so they go forward with the plan, taking over a Danubian ship so that they can gain access to Cold Station 12. I'm guessing Klingons aren't invited. They usually aren't invited around things that are lethal that are kept in breakable containers. I think it's a good policy. In fact, I think that policy should be expanded. With them out of the way, the augments are free to knock out everyone using the environmental controls, including the head of the station, Dr. Lucas, Phlox's old friend, because he has people skills. He's very good at dealing with people. Dr. Lucas has been brought up in the show before. He was the one receiving the letter back in Dear Doctor. Right now he's working to find cures to deadly diseases, and based upon that episode, I'm guessing to then file them away and never use them to save anyone at all. Archer takes the time during this to have dinner with Smike and discuss things, in the hopes that he might realize Earth isn't filled with people that want to lock up or kill him. Things are going quite well with the story. I found all the embarrassment of 2 days and 2 nights has faded away in the wake of this whole new paradigm that Enterprise has.
I'm approaching a new sleep cycle.
When does your hibernation begin?
Oh, not for another few weeks.
And suddenly it's all coming back again. Seems Smike is looking up history about the eugenics wars, and eventually the subject comes around to the disease that Archer's dad had. As Archer considers it, Phlox admits that some of Sung's work that he's looked at is absolutely brilliant, and it is a shame that he can't do any of it. The scene's another nice break because it doesn't seek to preach. It doesn't have that absolutism seen in some of the worst Trek scenes. Here's the point, and let's beat your face into it until you agree stuff. In fact, if anything, it makes the point that it is a tool, because the Danubians have used genetic engineering without leading to a war. Nuance. It's a welcome companion. Anyway, they're near Cold Station 12, and there's naturally concern about where a Klingon warship might be hiding. And then there's the 11 hostages on the station itself. Finally, when Sung threatens to blow Lucas's head off, Archer agrees to turn around and go. But Sung has bigger problems. The code needed to access the embryos is taking way too long to crack. It won't do them any good if Starfleet sends too many ships for them to escape, after all. What's worse, he's discovered Dr. Lucas lied about not having the codes, so Malik starts roughing him up.
What's that? That language is unbecoming of a man of science.
No self-respecting scientist would learn Mandalorian anyway. Malik says they should try a different plan. Toss one of the other hostages into those booths, like the ones they have on game shows. Only instead of dropping money on them, they'd get hit by diseases that kill within minutes. Sung, as a doctor, is aghast at the idea, but Malik points out that in their position, to not make Lucas talk by any means necessary jeopardizes all of their lives and Sung's own grand vision. So he reluctantly agrees. They're running out of time. In fact, Enterprise may be leaving, but Archer and a boarding party, including Smike and Phlox, have beamed over to attempt a rescue. That's the typical way of describing it, attempt a rescue, but when you're describing anything that Archer is leading, it should be called an attempt in any case. We're going to make an attempt to head down to the corner store and get some milk, but I can't make you any promises, Admiral. Sung, whom you'll remember used to work here, is intimately familiar with these diseases, and gives Lucas a play-by-play of how this man is dying. Spiner gives a terrific performance as an anti-villain, a fanatic who will allow a great deal of evil to happen in the name of his cause, yet is ripped up by every instance of it that there is. We get the sense that Sung, much like Garrick in The Die Is Cast, is more tortured than his own victim is. In the end, Sung is the one that breaks first, ordering that the antipathogen be released to save the hostage. Only Malik refuses, and the delay is enough to prevent Sung from saving him. And more bad news for the good guys, the augments picked up on Archer's team and the group is quickly captured. Their presence is actually a complication, because the augments told Sung that Smike was dead, so finding out they threw him out and lied about it is shocking to him. Rounding out Sung's day, when he tries threatening Enterprise, Archer blurts out to execute their orders, which is to initiate the station's self-destruct. Starfleet gave them the codes to do so just in case. And it makes sense as a last-ditch effort. Sung may be here for the embryos specifically, but can you count on the good graces of someone who takes hostages not to also take vials of deadly pathogens? Someone with an understanding of biology to weaponize them like nobody else could? Maybe even tailor them to specifically ignore augments and wipe out the rest of the human race to leave them as the lone representatives of our species? It's not a pretty solution, but maybe that's what you need when you have a very ugly problem. Of course, the matter is moot anyway. The thing about trying to outsmart a super genius is, it's kind of hard. So within seconds of trying, the augments manage to knock out the comms and prevent Enterprise from sending out the signal. What's worse, Malik realizes that Phlox is Lucas's friend, so he shoves him into one of the booths next. And Lucas finally enters the code in order to save Phlox's life. So, that means the moment has finally arrived.
They're beautiful. We came here so many times. Just to look at them.
It's the most beautiful green screen I've ever seen. Meanwhile, Archer tries an escape, which means getting into a fight with Malik. As I've said and probably belabored, Archer is suited for a fist fight the same way that a fish is suited to river dance. You'd think they'd be good at it until you actually try to picture them actually doing it. After kicking Archer around, Malik programs the station to drop all the containment fields after they've left, meaning everyone is about to come down with a serious case of everything. It's going to be uglier than Great-Grandma on Shave Me Legs Day, so he mercy kills Smike first. Then they all escape while everyone on the station tries desperately not to die horribly, so they send Archer off to save them all. Like I said, sometimes you have to settle for a not pretty solution. Will he make it in time? The answer is revealed in the conclusion of the trilogy next time.
All hail the Overlord! All hail the Overlord!
You son of a bitch.
Actually, Mother was a chemist.